This took place in 2017 when I was a junior in college. For context, I live in somewhat of a small town in East Massachusetts, which happens to be quite a ways away from my campus. This commonly resulted in me having to rely on taking the train to get to and from school for classes. When my parents were home, I'd normally just get a ride from them, but when they weren't home, I'd have to take the train. Owning a car was expensive, and taking an Uber was a hassle. I'd mostly take the train to and from campus where I would go during the day and get home by night. As a child, I've always had somewhat of an innate fear of the night. Not so much the night itself, but what lies in the night. I've never had anything to base this fear on until a night I had gotten off at the train station and saw a woman sitting by herself on a bench. This was weird as it was closing in on 1 a.m. on a school night, which meant that no other trains would be operating until the next day. For whatever reason, I look over to her and we briefly make eye contact. But from there, it was too late. From my peripheral vision, I can see the woman begin to get up and walk over to me in a hurry. Acting like I didn't notice or care, I ordered an Uber to get home when she comes up to me and stands about 3 feet away from me. I give her a smile and she's looking at me with this blank expression, as if she were doing something mundane, like taking out the trash or mowing the lawn. In the most monotone voice I've ever heard, she says, "Hi, my car is broken. Can you help me fix it?" First of all, there's no cars in the nearby parking lot, and second, if she did have a car, why was she waiting at a train station? I thought of it as a little weird, but I didn't feel threatened or afraid. I apologized and told her that I couldn't as I had a curfew and had to get home. However, she disregarded what I had said and kept on insisting for me to help her. Being a guy who majored in engineering, I would have helped, but seeing as there was no car in sight, I couldn't do anything. I then asked her about this, expecting her to come up with some excuse. But instead of responding to me with a reason, she says something that still haunts me till this day. "Come on now, Brandon. Don't bother me with details." After that, she then forms this unsettling smile that looked like it had belonged to a witch that chilled me to the bone and went back to where she was sitting. To put things into perspective, Brandon is my name, and I have no idea as to how she knew it. I've never seen this woman in my life, and I wasn't wearing anything that would display my name. Thankfully, my Uber had pulled in and I had gone home. Later that same week, I had woken up to 10 plus phone calls and texts from different numbers. All of them ranging from "Hi, how are you?" to "I'll find you." I knew there was a big chance that it had to do with something from the other night. Two things don't happen in a short period of time like that without them being linked somehow. I never saw that woman again, and I don't take the train at night.
When I was 19, I moved to the country with my parents to start our new lives and just get away from the city. This happened in the 1980s. We had to say goodbye to our apartment in Queens, and it drove 3+ hours to our new home in a rural part of New York. There aren't a lot of rural areas in New York, but they do exist. Anyway, we had gotten settled into a town. I couldn't remember the name, but it had a sort of country aesthetic, if that makes any sense. An area of the state where you didn't have to struggle over paying bills and having a hassle to get from place to place. To our family, it seemed like a dream come true. My parents bought the house in the hills for a very decent price, and it was perfect for us. The house wasn't massive, just a 2-story home, appropriate for a family like mine. Things went pretty well for the first few months. About 3 months after we moved in, my friends from the city came to visit. And that night, we had all decided to go down by the creek, a few miles away from my house. It was a pretty neat spot for teens who just wanted to get a break from themselves. We sit down by a few logs and drank our asses off throughout the night, laughing at the most random things. At one point, we were all talking about a girl I had liked, down by Maple Street, when one of my friends shushed us, telling us to be quiet, and that he had heard something in the woods. Pretty soon after, one of my other friends and I started to hear it too. If I can only remember correctly, it sounded like a faint whispering, coming from somewhere in the woods. At that point, all thoughts of it being an animal checked out. We weren't sure as to what these people were saying, but just imagine people whispering gibberish and nonsense. That's when my friend Daryl stands up and says, "What do you want?" We ask him what was wrong, and that's when he says that we're being surrounded. We turn our heads, and due to the small light illuminating from the moon, all we can see is about 5 people in the woods staring in our direction. What struck us most was what they were wearing. They appeared to be dressed in these long red robes with a hood covering their faces. Whoever they were, or what they were planning on doing, obviously wasn't good. That's when we all decided to just book it and run out of the woods and back to my house. We thought about calling the local sheriff, but I knew it would take a while, seeing as there was only one police station. We never told anyone else about what we had seen, especially my parents, as I didn't want to put any stress on them. I've been back to the creek by myself, but always remember to bring a gun. I've never seen or heard from the people in the woods again, and I hope it stays that way. I'm still not sure if those people were just there as a way to joke around, or if it were something much more serious. I've always heard stories of unidentified cult gatherings in the forest to perform satanic rituals, or to do things to honor the devil himself. Fast forward till about 2 years later. I moved away to go to college when my dad had told me something later that fall. As my dad was going to his shed to do some gardening, he found several used candles sitting in the form of a circle on the floor. Inside of the circle was what looked like an old stuffed voodoo doll. He had told me that he had instantly got this feeling of dread the second he stepped in there, and he now knows why. Till this day, I'm certain that this had to be the same people that had been watching me and my friends in that same place 2 years ago. I haven't been back up there since, and my parents sold the house and moved down to Florida. This just goes to show you that nothing good happens after dark.
When I was 17, I worked at a pizza chain as a part-time job in Iowa City, Iowa. Being a teen with not much in my life, I had mostly worked the night shifts alongside my other coworker. It would stay busy well into the day and would start to die down come evenings. This was around the time where people were simply too tired to come and get food and preferred to just order it. I won't disclose any of my colleagues' information, so I'll just call my coworker Jared. Jared was a bit older than me, who was mainly placed in charge of making the pizzas while I was the one delivering them. On this night, it had just been me and him. It was already past 10 and we were getting ready to close when the phone rang. I answered it and right away I hear someone on the other end. An older lady requesting a large pepperoni. I was annoyed as we were about to close and I really did not feel like driving. She had given me the address, which thankfully wasn't too far, and because it was a single pie, I'd be in and out. Thankfully, Jared had made a pepperoni pizza and couldn't deliver it due to a cancellation, so he just told me to take that one instead. I hop into my car and drive a few miles down near the interstate. Now, this interstate wasn't very popular and it was also somewhat unsettling. This was mainly due to the fact that it had been surrounded by forest on the opposite sides of it. Driving through these roads at night with nobody around is enough to creep anyone out. After all, I did live in the rural part of my city, which only added to the creepiness. Anyway, I'm driving down the road when I see something up ahead on the side of the grass. As I drive closer, I realize it's a man waving his arms up in the air, attempting to flag me down. Now, I would have just drove by him, but earlier that week, I had heard the phrase, "Character is what you do when no one is looking." And for whatever reason, that was the night I decided that I was a man of character. Huge mistake. I pull over slowly and roll down my window just a tad before asking him if he needed help. Right away, he starts rambling on about how he was taking his dog for a walk when it ran off into the woods. He then offers me $300 if I could help him find his dog, as it was near and dear to him. Almost immediately, alarms start going off in my head as he's telling me his story. 1. Who walks their dog in the middle of an interstate? 2. If he did have a dog, why is he walking it at this time of night? And 3. The forest area is barricaded by wired fences, so there's no way the dog would have just jumped over it. I might have been naive, but I wasn't born yesterday. I apologized, telling him I'd be unable to, as I had to deliver this pizza and that it couldn't be late. However, he disregarded what I had said and basically tried pressuring me into helping him. I tell him no once again. Just as he was about to say something, I hear, clear as day, a blood-curdling scream from the woods calling for help. From my point of view, it sounded like a woman's cry for help. It was then when I had looked at this person who now had this menacing glare. He looks around for a brief second, leans in toward my car, and tells me to leave in a more upset tone. Not giving it a second thought, I speed down the road, not looking back. The rest of my delivery went smoothly, but I still couldn't shake the feeling off of what had happened. I reported my encounter to the police, and I was later told that they had searched the area, but had found no sign of anyone. The next day, I had gone back to my job and quit right then and there. No more late-night deliveries for me. Till this day, I'm still not sure what I encountered that night. I'm not sure if it was someone that really did lose their dog or something much worse. Update to March 14th of 2023. As it turns out, this woman had been missing for the past 9 years when she was abducted from her home in Davenport. Police had found the man I encountered about 10 miles away, along with the woman. He of course was arrested, and the woman had bruises all over her. Apparently, this man was wanted for assault and battery as he was a convicted felon. Now that I've found this out, I was even more concerned what would have happened had I gone inside. I don't know if I was going to become a victim or something much worse. The woman who had been kidnapped is doing well and is now back in school for her studies.